So we are going to start with the first canto of Savitri, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 1, The Symbol Dawn. 4 years ago, we started Savitri with Book 4, and then we continued with Book 4, finished Part 2, Part 3, then last 4 months we were doing Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother. Now we will go back to the beginning. For a couple of reasons, we had done that sequence to kind of get introduced to Savitri in another manner. One of the reasons is that if you start with the symbol dawn directly, Savitri, then you are totally lost. It is one of the most difficult, in fact, the most difficult cantos in Savitri, the symbol dawn. And he kept on making it more and more difficult by writing this canto any number of times. There are something like 30-40 drafts of Savitri, of the symbol dawn itself. Some 35, 25 are fairly good, but some here and there were there already. And although he had sort of completed the whole of the symbol dawn, definitely by 44, still sometimes later on chit pads he used to write few more lines. So that way it looks as if the symbol dawn is something which is not to be completed. It kept on growing, becoming more and more complex also. The very first line, "It was the hour before the gods awake," appeared, I don't remember exactly, maybe in the 7th or 8th draft. In the 7th or 8th draft of Savitri, not in the beginning itself. And then there also in the draft, first time he wrote that first line, "It was the hour before the gods awake." The first version was with G small, gods small, G. But the G was small. Then he rewrote that line, he made it capital. It means that some kind of a significance is attached to every little detail. More and more meaning, so to say, is pumped into the line itself by that thing. Now this line, well, we are doing the Book of Beginnings, so that is a little background about the Book of Beginnings of the first canto itself. There are in all 5 cantos in the first book, and the first 2 cantos, the symbol dawn and the issue, they form what one might call the prolegomena of Savitri, the introduction, the preface, the whole of Savitri. It is on that basis that the rest of the poem sort of develops. Now, it catches the entire essence of this creation and its problem. These 2 cantos, they seize the entire issue of what, so to say, he is up to in describing in the rest of the poem, you see. Therefore, in a way, these 2 cantos do not really get connected in a manner of continuity with the next 22 cantos of the first book. There is a sort of an abrupt change. You have these two cantos, and suddenly from these two cantos he jumps, so to say, to Ashwapati, who comes down here and then describes the entire yoga tapasya of Ashwapati in 22 cantos of part 1. You see. Ashwapati yoga tapasya is for a specific purpose. In fact, it has threefold purpose, but the essential purpose is to bring down the divine power which will establish the divine creation here in the mortal world. To bring down from the transcendent, from the supreme, the divine power, Shakti, who will establish the divine manifestation, bring down the divine manifestation here upon earth. That is the basic crux of Ashwapati's tapasya. Therefore, you had there the beginning. In fact, the very first line of Canto 3 opens with the line, "A worse desire compelled her mortal birth." A worse desire compelled her mortal birth. First he described the problem, the issue in the Prolegomena, why Savitri should come, what she is supposed to do and all that, the day when Satyavan is to die and all those things. And then he suddenly starts with the line, "A worse desire compelled her mortal birth." Worse desire, the aspiration of humanity, of the growing soul of the earth, the evolutionary soul seeking the divine manifestation upon earth, that is the worst desire. But the worst desire by itself is feeble, cannot go by itself very high, cannot climb to the topmost peak. And the yogi comes down here, he does yoga tapasya and takes the worst desire and carries it forward to the topmost summit, offers it to the Divine Mother. Look, this is your desire and you have to come down and take the mortal birth. So that is the kind of a plan of that thing. So, this is the book of beginnings. Yeah, it is very abstruse, but that is the way it is, you see. Book of beginnings. You like it? You have seen this one? Emmanuel. In the Simmerdawn, you have got two cantos. Sorry, two sections. In the first canto, you have got two sections. Section 1 has 46 sentences, 185 lines. Section 2 has 42 sentences and 156 lines. So the total number of lines in the Simmerdawn is 341. So we are perhaps going to do today only the section 1 in a rapid way, and then we'll go into more details gradually. Section 1 will cover more or less the way in which the mother has narrated some of these passages while the Huta paintings were being done. We'll take those passages you see today.
Why do you want to make it quickly?
Pardon me?
Why do you want to make it quickly, the section 1?
Today.
Why? Why quickly?
To get what the mother is saying.
And we go back after?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. We'll do for a long time. That is why I said quickly, you see. So that we can keep the mother aside a little then. And have our own play, you see.
Okay.
It was the hour before the gods awake. The mother starts the explanation by narrating the story of creation. the story of creation which she had learnt from Theon when she was in Algeria. The beginning of this creation and a problem connected with that. So she says, there is an ancient tradition which describes the creation as done by some first emanations of the Supreme Mother. Who are four emanations? Who were four emanations, four powers? In the sense and the feeling of the Supreme Power, they cut connection with their origin and became independent. It is a story, so you have to just accept. So there were four powers, they were emanated and they cut themselves off from the origin itself, you see. Being separated from their origin, entered into darkness. So that is the beginning of this creation, entered into darkness. Why? Because they have cut off their contact with the Divine Himself. Therefore it is all darkness, you see. In a certain sense, of course, that darkness is also a divine darkness. You see. Now she is describing the four powers. The first was consciousness. Consciousness in light, and by cutting himself from his origin, he went down and down towards unconsciousness. So consciousness became inconscience in our language. This happened after they came. The second was bliss and turned into suffering. The third was truth and turned into falsehood. The fourth one was left life and turned into death. So you have got consciousness became inconscience, bliss becoming suffering, truth becoming falsehood, and life becoming death. Now, if these are the four independent powers, then we cannot say that one is due to the other. They are independent of themselves, you see. See, for instance, according to Theon, the mother says in the agenda that it is the presence of death that has brought falsehood. It is the presence of death that has falsehood. So the cause of falsehood is death. So if you want to remove falsehood, you have to remove death. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. No, it is falsehood that has given rise to death, according to Theon. No, I'm sorry, the other way around. I was mixing up. Falsehood has caused death. According to Theon. But she says that according to Sri Aurobindo, it is death which is the cause of falsehood. Death is the cause of falsehood. Death is the cause of falsehood. Now, but because it is a story, so we can't really question it. Now, if death and falsehood are independent powers which came out, how can they depend upon each other? You understood the question, but you have to take it as a story only, you see. This happened, the separation, this happened after they came into the vital level. Through various grades down, when they came to the vital level. When this was seen, it was decided that the second emanations would be made to repair the mistake of the first. And the second emanations were the gods. And the second emanations were the gods. This first line, it was the hour before the gods awake, refers to the condition of the world before the gods were born. Now, Mother is equating gods awake to gods were born. If you go in the literal sense, you see, it means that. Actually, that gives rise to a kind of a puzzle also. It kind of gives rise to a puzzle. Whether they were awake and they were born. Because the first line says, it was the hour before the gods awake. It means that they keep on awaking cycle after cycle. So, can we say that awaking is equal to being born? No. But I think the Mother is not going these words in that literal sense. You see, you have to see that from the right. So, you have to be a little careful also while understanding the language, what she means and what that thing is. Now, gods awake is a very important event, because the very next line, next sentence, it was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, a huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence march. So, because the gods are not awake, therefore the divine event is blocked. It is not able to proceed further. Mind of night is coming in the way and blocking the divine event. This is what it would mean, you see. Now, what does that God awake mean? Gods never sleep. They never sleep, you see. The Puranas also say they never sleep, you see. Now, by the way, this story of the creation which is here, Mother has described these four powers separated from the divine origin, and they became their opposites because they lost contact with the divine origin, you see. Sri Aurobindo has repeated, recited, recounted that story on a number of occasions in Savitri itself. We have got a number of passages, we shall see them, how that story and those descriptions in Savitri are exactly similar. How the powers separated and how the opposites came out. That is very well described in Savitri in a number of places also, you see. So there is a kind of a connection between these two. Now these gods, who are these gods? These are the gods who are not even in the transcendent. They awake when the divine power comes into operation. The divine power comes into operation when the divine Shakti takes the birth, comes into operation and starts the work, you see. See, it is at that time the gods awake. Means it is the action of the divine Shakti which is kind of bringing out these energies of the total non-manifest into operation. So they are not even the gods of Satchidananda. They are gods unborn yet. They are not yet awake. They have not been pulled out of their total unknowability. No, they are potentially there. Potentially there, that's all. No, potentially there is no question of they are not really in that sense existing. They are non-manifest. In the non-manifest they are present. They are not come into action. So it is that will happen, they will come into action when the divine Shakti steps into operation here. It is at that time she will bring down those, she will make them awake. Means the divine manifestation will be simultaneously with the awakening of these gods. And it is that hour which is being counted here, you see. This first line, the first condition of the word, before the gods were born. Well, that born then sounds okay in that sense. You see, in that sense. It means they have been brought out now from the total non-manifest into creation. They are born, you see.